Hello and welcome to Cook With Me. Today we are going to be doing the warm wild rice salad. So I'm very excited. You may have noticed there's a lot of ingredients on this list and a lot of instructions, but I do want to assure you that it's not difficult. And once we can get you through all of the different learnings that I'm going to pack into tonight's session, then hopefully you'll see that this type of salad and similar types of salads are very easy to pull together, especially when you don't need to follow the instructions. So that's the purpose of tonight. I've got a lot to pack in here. The convenient thing though is that the rice is going to take about 40 minutes to cook. So we're going to have a little bit of time that I can go into more detail on some different topics with you. And this is truly the benefit of Cook With Me. I just want to highlight that for a second. I have spoken with a few of you this week, and I know that many of you totally get it. And you understand now that even though either a recipe may not excite you, and you're not so sure exactly what you're going to get out of it, or it's something that you may have made similarly before, I believe a lot of you are understanding now after doing a few of these Cook With Me sessions that it's about so much more than just the recipe itself. So what I'm attempting to do is show you how to make the kitchen your space that you can work in so easily without stress and with a lot of the skills and ideas and tricks to make it a lot easier. So everything that we're teaching during a recipe hopefully will apply to so many other recipes that you make. And eventually, after you do enough of these, the idea is that you won't actually need to rely on the recipes anymore, or any recipes for that matter. So my intention is to help you become so much more confident and more relaxed in the kitchen space, so that when you come to dinner time, you don't have to sit there and worry about following a recipe. Now, like I said, I know a lot of you are getting that already. I do want to send out a major thank you and props to those mums that have started making this a regular thing once a week with your son or daughter. And the couple of you that are doing this really dedicated at this moment, I'm very proud of you and I'm very excited for the results that you're already getting. So please keep it up. It's an amazing opportunity to get that bonding time with a son or daughter, especially because then it's not mom or dad having to actually teach them, it's somebody else. And oftentimes it's a bit easier on you. So that being said, we do need to get that rice cooking. So let's dive in straight away. Hope everyone's ready. I do want to hear from you. Let me know how you're going on your end and if you're ready to get into the salad. There's, like I said, so much I want to tell you about wild rice. We're going to get into the tempeh idea, lots about the dressings. There's heaps. So first of all, we've got to get that rice cooking. It's going to take 40 minutes. If you've ideally soaked the rice before, let's get that out now. If you forgot, that's all right. Chances are you've probably been eating unsoaked rice for many parts or most part of your life already, and that's, that's a topic, and that's all right. And what we're going to do is hopefully make it just as easy for you to develop these types of habits ongoing, because it doesn't have to be any harder. It's just a matter of organization. All right, now let me just get this all organized for everyone here. Just need to make sure that I get my comments coming up. Okay, so let's rinse the rice from the soaking water. We can give it a little rinse. We don't need to. It's mostly just about draining it at this point. Make sure we get all of it. And ideally 12 to 24 hours this has been soaking. Now the reason for that I'm going to get into here once we get this on the boil. If you've followed the exact measurements of the recipe, then you'll have about 1.5 cups of rice. And brown rice is going to take a ratio of 1 part dry measure to 1.5 parts water. Okay, but the wild rice is going to take 1:2. So I've already done the math for you. It's 2.5 cups of water that we're going to add if you've added the 1.5 cups as per the recipe. So 2.5 cups of fresh filtered water that we're going to add into this in a saucepan. And this method of cooking rice is called the absorption method. It is my absolute preferred method because it's fail-safe, fail-proof, if you will. I know a lot of you are sitting there going, yeah, but I have a rice cooker. And that's okay. It's just that I haven't found any rice cookers that don't have the non-stick coating. So if you have found a brand that doesn't use the non-stick coating, please let me know. I would like to investigate and possibly get one, but you really don't need one. If you've got a saucepan like this, hopefully stainless steel and not non-stick, and you get the absorption method ideas right in your head, you seriously won't think twice. It's just so easy. Okay, now we need to measure out our 2.5 cups of water. And we're going to go for the filtered water on this one. Okay, so soaking your rice is so important for many reasons. It's not meant to stress you out though. The benefit is going to be when you start to experience a difference in your own body as a result of having the two. So possibly, and everyone's different, some people get a bit of bloating or a bit of heavy feeling when they eat unsoaked grains. And that's why a lot of people are steering away from grains nowadays. And that's a lot of reason for the diets out there that are now promoting grain-free entirely. Okay, so I guess the moral of that story is everyone's different is one topic of very big importance to discuss. But possibly my point there is, personally, I feel the difference between the soaked and the unsoaked grains. So my digestive system has gotten to the point where I can tell if I'm eating unsoaked grains versus soaked ones. The soaked grains that have been properly prepared in that sense and well respected, like many of the cultures around the world that eat them successfully do, then we remove a great percentage of the phytic acid that is causing that indigestion. And it actually makes them a lot more digestible and a lot more nutritious. The nutrition becomes more accessible to our bodies. So it is a very important topic, and I am going to go into that in a lot more detail in a separate video. But the moral of the story is we're not doing this just to create you more work. It is a significantly important step when it comes to grains to address. And that being said, wild rice is technically not a grain. So I'm going to touch on that one in 1 second. I just want to make sure everyone's caught up with all of us here. Good, okay. Now, a couple of questions I'll just address here. So, forgetting to add the apple cider vinegar. Yes, not a problem. It just helps the reduction of the phytic acid. So when we kind of acidify that liquid slightly, it helps remove that extra phytic acid. If you didn't add it, not a big deal. Soaking it is still better than not soaking it. So that's that one. The other one is used black rice instead of wild rice. Okay, yes, great question. They are very different species, very different things. Black rice is delicious and it's a whole grain rice, and that's wonderful. Wild rice is technically not a rice. They're not related at all. It's an aquatic grass. So if you are following a grain-free diet, you can actually eat wild rice because it's technically not a grain. However, we eat it like a grain and it cooks very similarly to rice, so they tend to get lumped in the same category. It is obviously gluten-free as well, and it's so high in so many nutrients. So just quickly, I'm going to touch on that now because you could call it a superfood easily. It's native to North America, so it's cultivated in Canada and the US. And like I said, it's an aquatic grass. So it's very high in phosphorus for one, which is a mineral that we need for strong bones. It's also very high in folate. And folate, you may have heard, and related to women that are pregnant, going through pregnancy, we need higher levels of folate in the body. Folate is a member of the vitamin B group, and it's different to folic acid. So folic acid is the synthetic form of folate. So if you can get folate in your foods, you're much better off. And a serving of wild rice gives you about 11% of your daily need of folate, which is considerably high compared to other foods that you can eat. So that's a really good one for pregnant women to be eating in particular, is the wild rice. It's high in a lot of other stuff. It's high in antioxidants. It's very high in protein, comparable to quinoa and amaranth, the protein content. So yeah, don't let that one go by. I know it is a lot more expensive per kilo, but again, if you just get in the habit of incorporating, say, half a cup every time you cook rice, or adding that half a cup of wild rice to, say, cauliflower rice, or you can even have it as a sweet. So there's a lot of uses for the wild rice, and I would encourage you to get familiar with it. It's got a delicious nutty flavor. I absolutely love it. Okay. So with the absorption method, I turn that on to high heat, put the lid on. I'm going to wait for that to boil. As soon as it boils, we're going to turn it down to the lowest heat level, and we're going to let it just sit there and absorb the liquid for the next 40 minutes or so. So I'm just waiting for that to boil, and then we'll turn that down to the lowest heat. If you're using a gas stove, then I would encourage you to move the rice to the smallest possible gas burner so we can actually get that temperature down quite low. If it's too high, it'll just kind of crust onto the bottom and potentially burn before it absorbs. So that's one little trick with the absorption method in rice. All right, now we've got the rice happening. Next step, we're going to cut up all the fresh bits of the salad, and then we'll move towards getting the capsicum char grilled, discussing that and lots of uses for that, and then make the dressing and then talk about the tempeh. So it feels like there's a lot of pieces to this salad, but like I said, first of all, the tempeh is optional. You do not need to have a topping on this salad. It does stand alone in and of itself as a salad for a meal. Plenty of protein, do not worry about that. And lots of other fresh vegetables and fresh herbs. So if you are at the stage now where we can grab all of your fresh ingredients for the salad. So the capsicum, the shallots, the coriander, and if you haven't got snow peas, you could use green beans or anything similar if you like. I'm going to use green beans today. And then we'll get those into the salad. So how do we want to put them in the salad? Personally, I like green beans raw, and especially snow peas, which is what the recipe actually calls for, raw. If you don't, we can lightly blanch them. I'm going to keep them raw. I'm just going to cut them really fine so that they're still really nice in the mouth. All right, so let's just take just the very tips of the green beans off. Now I might just want to show you this one. I see this happen a lot, and it's potentially, I don't know, a skill thing or maybe a bit of a laziness thing, or some people that just don't have as much of a crazy desire to prevent waste like I do. But instead of taking off this much of the bean, like I see many people do, let's just take off just what we need. And in the event that we missed one or two, we can go in a little deeper, all right? But it's better than wasting a whole big chunk of the bean, which is what I often see when people just kind of get in there and start cutting up the beans. The other thing I'll say too is that you've actually paid for all of the waste that we cut off. You've paid probably by weight when it comes to beans, so that's less money gone down the drain as well. We can do the same thing on the other side. I like to just butt the green beans up to the knife, and that kind of lines them all up for me. And then we'll just take just what we need off the tips. Hopefully no more. We can check very easily. Yeah, missed one and missed two. All good. There, easy, less waste. So coming back to what I said before, I just want them to be nice and tiny so that I can keep them raw in the salad. So I'm just going to bunch them up in my hand and just keep nice little rounds, small little rounds for our salad so they can go in raw. How you cut something does make a huge difference to the mouthfeel, especially if it's someone's first impression with a food. So if it's their first impression just eating green beans raw, this is pretty important. There we go, green beans done. If you're doing snow peas, you might like to cut them on an angle, just for a little something different, not necessary. All right, let's stick with the greens. Now, shallots and coriander, and I've thrown in a little bit of sorrel leaves because they're fresh from the garden and I'm feeling pretty spoiled and loving that lemony flavor from sorrel. So now, one thing I wanted to show you with this, whenever you have something that's long and skinny that you're about to chop, such as the shallots, it also applies to things like celery or long stems of coriander, that type of thing, parsley. Anytime you've got something long and skinny, we can halve our efforts of chopping simply by doing this. Cut them in half, double it over the pile, and then we bunch all that up and chop from there. There's a few little straggler bits at the end. I'm going to take them off as well and include them in the pile. And then we get to do half as much chopping because it'll fit in our bunch quite nice. So I'm going to make these also quite small. Just chopping through those guys. It'll be much easier to chop this type of thing with A, a sharp knife, and B, a tightly held bunch like I'm doing here, with my knuckle as the guide. There we go. So we've got a little bit of lemoniness from the sorrel, for me personally anyway. Sorry it's not in the recipe, if that's a little bit rude of me. We've got our shallots. our capsicum, our coriander, and then we're going to get the capsicum happening now too. All right, so before we cut the capsicum, let's actually turn the grill on, and I'm going to show you how to char grill these capsicum. There's a lot of other uses for char grilled capsicum. It's quite a delicacy in a lot of delis that you go into. You'll see it probably preserved in oil or in a type of vinegar. So you can actually do that yourself really easily. If you've got some extra capsicums, we can grill some extra ones, and you can keep them in the fridge in a little bit of oil and vinegar, and then use them for decorative salads or anything you want in the next week or two. I can hear this boiling now, so I'm going to turn the rice down to the lowest setting, so 1 in this digital oven or stove. And we're going to leave the lid on. This is really important with the absorption method. I know it's tempting to go up to the stove and go, "Hey Mom, what's for dinner?" and open the lid, but leave the lid on. It just keeps all the steam in, and it's going to keep it cooking and keep the absorption happening. All right, so do check on your rice, see how that's going, and then we're going to turn the grill on. So when I say top heat in the oven, this is what we refer to as the grill, and it's a different setting to the regular bake setting. So the bake setting normally cooks from top and bottom equally. We just want the top heat. So we just want the grill to turn on here, and we're going to turn that actually up to about 220, 230, somewhere around there. Then we're going to make sure that we move the rack within the oven to quite high underneath there, keeping room for our capsicum to go just underneath the, what are they called? The elements. Find the word, Ashley. Okay, that's heating up. Let's cut the capsicums. We're going to put them into quarters so that we can lay them fairly flat on the grilling tray. And nothing too complicated here. There's many ways to cut a capsicum. We won't get too technical about that. I like to slice it around the belly and then around the stem, so that when we peel it open, we can take out all the seeds quite easily there. If you've got your scrap bucket near you, taking out all the seeds, and you can pull out the white pith from there too if you like, a little bit. Apparently it's not the greatest for us, but I'm not so sure about that yet. All right, so I just cut it around the base of the capsicum like that, and then I'm just going to cut around the stem. Just my way of doing it. Everyone's got a different art. And then we can peel that out. The white stuff, the seeds. Done. All right, now also many ways to char grill a capsicum. If you want to go to the effort of turning the barbecue on, you definitely can. You'll get that nice extra smoky flavor. Personally, I just like to keep it simple under the grill. So in order to do that and to get the most even grilling, I like to put them in quarters first. If you were to put them in halves, it's going to go into the oven like that, and we're only going to get charring on the very top of the round. So if we put them in quarters, we can lay them both flat and get more char grilled surface. All right, so now all you need is a little baking tray to accommodate the capsicum. Any size will do. And the bottoms are not actually going to cook, and we're not actually baking it onto the tray. So you don't generally need a liner or a baking paper of any kind, and we don't even really need to oil the tray because it's not going to stick. So we'll just try and get that in there as evenly as we can so they can char grill. There we go. And it's literally that simple. Now these take approximately 15 minutes. Everyone's grill is going to be different, and you're probably going to be putting it at different levels. So just keep an eye on it. We're going to check it in much less time than 15 minutes, just in case. But we will smell it, so it's okay. And we do actually want to create that charring. So let's put them in, see how close it is just under the element there. We want to give it that little bit of distance, but keep it quite close to speed that along. Okay, so that's happening. Let's get ready while the heat is still on with the grill to toast up some seeds. Now again, remember how I said there are a lot of parts and pieces to this salad. For that very reason, it does stand alone as a meal. So keep that in mind. Your efforts are not going to waste. You're getting a whole meal out of this. Similarly to, making a roast, then making your steamed veggies, then making some potatoes or whichever, or having a salad on the side. So it's no different. There's just as many moving parts, but instead we're going to pile it all into one salad. Now, the toasted almonds and sesame seeds. This is something where if you can afford now to take a little bit of extra time and use a slightly bigger tray, do a double or triple batch so that you can then put these extra toasted seeds back into a jar in the pantry and have them on a salad another day, a totally different salad, or as a sprinkle over breakfast even. They're delicious once they're toasted. And similarly, with the soaking of the rice, the toasting of the nuts and the seeds also has a reduction potential to reduce the phytic acid in the nuts and seeds. So it actually does improve their digestibility by toasting them. They are one thing that is a little bit better to have toasted or soaked and activated as opposed to purely raw. So we're going to take advantage of that, toast them, make them taste nice and crispy. Let's do the almonds, the sesame seeds, and I'm going to use some black sesame as well because I love the color difference. Now the sesame is going to grill or toast a lot faster than the almonds, so we're going to keep them separate and then we can monitor them. So just a little sprinkle of that one. I've said about 1/4 cup for this salad. Like I said though, if you've got extra, you can always put it in a jar, put it back in the pantry and save yourself the effort next time. It's also very expensive, I've seen in the shops, for these fancy salad sprinkles with tamaris and spices and everything. And they're very expensive, but they're actually really easy to make on your own at home. So this is how we start. All right, just checking on everyone. Let me know if you guys are going okay, or if there's anything you need me to clear up or slow down for. All right, so that's pretty simple. Sesame seeds we're going to put in first, and we can put them in at the same time as the capsicum. We're just going to really watch them. So before that goes in, I just want to chop up the almonds and get them ready for toasting first. So I've said 1 cup of almonds. These have been pre-activated. A topic for another day. We've got a lot to cover today, but basically they've been pre-soaked and then re-dried in my dehydrator. They taste so much better this way. I would highly recommend you try them side by side because it might just amaze you. Okay, not necessary to chop them up. I like them chopped. I like them toasted on all sides possible with lots of surface area that we can toast. If you do have a little bit of extra time tonight, you want to have a bit of a play, you want to get the hammer out of the garage and set this up in a cloth bag. It's a lot of fun for the kids. Just make sure you're using the hammer on not tiles. Use it outside on the concrete, and then the kids can have fun breaking up the almonds in the cloth bag with a hammer. That was always fun to do as a kid. Because I'm a boring adult and I just need to get you these skills across, I'm just going to chop them by the knife. But it's a lot more fun with the hammer, I promise. I've even got experimental and used the end of a huge wooden cutting board, and that worked well as well. You just got to contain the shrapnel. So we're just roughly going through each almond once if I can, more if they happen to do that. This is a great exercise if you've got little four-footed hoovers, four-footed vacuum cleaners in the house, dogs. They'll clean up all your flying almonds, hopefully. There we go. Just some nice rough chunky bits instead of whole almonds so we get more toasted surface area. Done, easy. Okay, so we're ready to go back to the grill now with our sesame seeds. Hopefully everyone's all caught up on that one, just checking on you guys. And we'll stick them in beside the capsicum. So no action yet on the capsicum, not at all. So it's still just heating up. Probably the grill was still heating up as well. So if the grill is not perfectly hot yet, this is going to take much longer than normal, but don't walk away. I've done it so many times thinking, okay, I'm going to remember the seeds, I'm going to remember the seeds, I'm going to remember the seeds, and you just get distracted and forget, or at least I do. So don't walk away because they will burn. So while I keep my hand on the oven, the next thing we're going to get ready to do is the dressing. So if you haven't already got out all of the things for the dressing, we're going to need some tamari, we're going to need some lemon and an orange. But if you haven't got an orange, you can always look in your fruit bowl and find a pomelo, which I was very lucky. It tastes incredible, and so I'm going to use that instead of an orange. I wouldn't, however, use mandarin in this dressing. I just don't think it'll quite be the right flavor, especially because in Australia in particular, the mandarins are very sweet. So I wouldn't recommend mandarin. You could get away with pomelo, you could get away with grapefruit, or obviously the orange that has been called for. Let's check on these, make sure we're not there yet. Nope, not there yet. And yes, so we'll get out all the rest of ingredients for the dressing, and you will need either a bullet style blender or a stick blender. So the immersion blenders. If you've got a large blender and that's all you've got, that's great too. I love having a little bullet style blender. This one's kind of on the fritz. I hope it's going to work well for us tonight. But just a little bullet style blender. This is what I make my dressings in nearly 95% of the time. Even if they don't need to be blended, it's just easier than shaking it. And it means less chopping for me when I need to put in things like the ginger and the garlic. So I'm going to let it do the work and not me. Okay, so we're starting to get a little bit of action here. A little bit of, I guess, it's not smoke, it's the steam from the oils that are evaporating off of the sesame. And we are getting a bit of sizzling happening with the capsicum. So notice a slight little bit of browning there. This is exactly what we're looking for. So I'm just going to give that a little mix up and put that back in for another round. Notice how much more oil is in the white sesame compared to the black sesame. See how those are moving around and that one's all clumped together? So that's the oil content. So let's just give them a little bit longer. I like them very well toasted. Okay, so when it comes to the dressing, we're going to need to use a fair bit of garlic, and this is the tricky one to specify in a recipe. All garlic is very different in strength, it's very different in size, and it's very hard to tell someone 1 gram or 1 teaspoon because they're all so very different. So what I'd say to you is if you love garlic, start with a full clove about this size. If you're not so sure, start with less and add more as you go. The other thing to keep in mind is that garlic does get stronger as the dressing sits. So if you're having it tomorrow, it's going to be a lot more garlicky. Okay, I'm going to call that good. We've got enough browning on there. I don't want to take it too much further and create any more, I guess, undesirable components of taking this too dark. So we're going to leave that there. I'm going to transfer this into a little bowl just so I can use this tray again for the almonds. They are very hot, so do be careful. And very sticky because of the oils that have come out of it. There we go. Okay, the almonds' turn. Let's get them into the oven. Like I said, if you can at all ever take the couple of extra seconds to create a double batch on this one, you will be very happy you did next time when you are looking for things to put on your salad and jazz it up. You'll have them ready in the pantry. All right, almonds. Still checking on the capsicum. We're only getting a tiny little bit of charring at the back. So I'm going to just rotate the tray. Just a little bit of charring at the back. Let's rotate that around. There we go. Yeah, there's so many uses for char-grilled capsicum, and it's something that you end up paying a definite premium for in any restaurant that you go to for char-grilled anything. There's a lot of not conjecture, but there's a lot of overhype around the charring of capsicum, as in they say that you should put it in a bowl, cover it with plastic wrap and let it sweat for 15 minutes, and then you should take it out and peel them by hand and slice them. It doesn't need to be that complicated. So we're going to peel them pretty much straight away as soon as they come out of the oven. And if they're not fully peeled, that's all right. We're not working in a 5-star restaurant. We're getting dinner on the table. All right. Now, again, without walking away from my almonds, be very careful you're watching yours as well. Just make sure we've got all the ingredients out for the dressing. I'm going to get my measuring devices out as well. I believe we'll need those. And we'll need to juice the orange and juice the lemon. Okay, no brown, oh, just a very little bit of browning so far. So let's just keep that going along. Capsicums are happening. All right. That is one massive pomelo. Don't even know if I can do this. This is where we need kids to come and help. Who can send their kids to me for the next Cook With Me session? I would love that. Might just have to put the word out there. Look how many seeds are in that pomelo. That's amazing. This is an organic pomelo from our good friends at Freshbox. And I'm actually tempted to see if I can grow some of those seeds, because this is probably the best pomelo I've actually ever had. It's very sweet. Look at all that juice. Do not waste a precious bit of this. Even the pulp you can throw in, because we're using the blades with the blender. You can even put the pulp in and get all that benefit as well. Extra fiber and extra goodness. Good little workout on the hands, and we'll call that one good. Okay, almonds. Okay, so we're getting a slight little bit of browning there. All right, so by now, just to recap, we're still waiting on the rice to cook. It's simmering away, absorbing. We've got the almonds out of the oven from toasting. We've got the sesame toasted, and we're just waiting on the char grilling of the capsicum, which they're very close, and yours are potentially done already. We're looking for it to be charred all over the surface of the skin without obviously getting a little bit too crazy or too burned. So we'll check on that regularly. And while that's still happening, let's continue with our dressing. So we'll bring all that over here so that we can make that happen. Gonna need our salad oils and the tamari. And hopefully we'll pick up right where we left off. Okay. So, everything we need. Okay, dressing. Let's come back to the garlic thing. Again, every little bit of garlic that you get is gonna be different. So let's just start with less, and you can put in more if you absolutely need to. One little way to peel garlic, you may have seen me do this already, it's much easier once it's crushed. So we give it a good squish first, and then the skin should just peel off quite easily from there. So let's pop that into the blender. Again, we're gonna let the blender do the work. And that was one fairly big clove of garlic, but generally the bigger the garlic, the less strong it is as well. So that's another little tip. It's hard to kind of taste it and see exactly where you're at. And I'm not gonna forget about those capsicums. So again, for you, if you wanna go back and check on them, we're probably pretty good. We could keep them going a little bit, but that's kind of what we're looking for. This one hasn't really char grilled, so I might put him back in a little bit longer. And believe it or not, they can get pushed even further than this. So if you were to be doing them on the barbecue, they would end up completely black all over. Well, that's how far most people would take them. And they do get a little bit easier to peel at that point. So that would be fine. If you're in a rush, that would be fine. I'm gonna leave it a little bit longer. And then we're gonna come to the ginger. So fresh ginger, absolutely amazing. So good for sore throats and colds and immune systems. I'm gonna just get some thin slices. I'm actually not even gonna bother peeling it. The skin is quite soft, it's quite fine. If it was a really old, kind of dried up, hard ginger, we would definitely take the skin off, but this one's all right. So I'm gonna cut it very thinly, and then we're gonna pop that into the blender and let it do the rest of the work for us. Now, this dressing is very much about the flavors of ginger and garlic, so I would recommend making sure that we do get enough of it in there. If you're not such a fan of ginger, you can obviously go less, and you can focus on more of the flavors of the saltiness or the garlic. But we're aiming for approximately 3 tablespoons worth of ginger. So if we want to get a feel for that, we can give that a rough chop. Roughly 3 tablespoons. 1, 2, 3. I love ginger, can you tell? So I'm gonna have a little bit extra in there because I love it. If in the event that you put in too much, and you taste your dressing, you can always take the dressing, pour it through a fine sieve, and get out all the extra bits of the ginger, and that'll prevent it from being stronger tomorrow, because as the ginger and the garlic sit, they will absorb more of that flavor. All right, time to take those capsicums out. We can turn that off and take them out now. Okay, so we'll call that good. Some nice charring on the top. At the end of the day, this is just to make them a different taste sensation in the mouth, and to slightly give them a little bit more specialness, a little bit more pizzazz, if you will, in the salad. So if you prefer them raw, absolutely okay to do that too. We're just gonna let them cool a little bit while we finish the dressing, and then we'll come back to peel them. All right. Now, the best way to store, a good question here, best way to store it. I take it you're meaning the capsicum, is that correct, Angela? Do you wanna just let me know if you mean the capsicum to store? If you are gonna do extra ones and store the capsicum, you'd be putting them in so slicing them, after we peel them, we're gonna slice them, pack them into a jar, and we're gonna fill that with a bit of olive oil and some apple cider vinegar. And that will preserve them in the fridge for a couple of weeks, provided they're covered with the oil, like submerged in the oil. It's quite a nice little treat to dig into thereafter. Okay, so Angela, you meant the ginger. Excellent. So regarding the ginger, how do we store the fresh ginger? You mean this one? Okay. So my favorite way to do it is just to leave it like this, uncovered in the fridge. If we cover it, it can have a tendency to get moisture and to go moldy. If you have a container that will prevent the moisture, then definitely you can do that, but that's the key. So we want ginger to dry out. If anything, that's how it preserves itself. So I tend to leave it like that in the fridge. Some people leave it on the bench. You can, depending on the season, depending on the humidity, you can get a little bit of mold, but I just keep it like that in the fridge. If you have excess, you can freeze it and you can use it straight from the freezer. It'll just be a little bit softer and squishier when it thaws out, but the same flavor, the same use in any recipe that you use thereafter. So great question. All right, we've got the garlic, we've got the ginger, tamari. Now I've said 5 tablespoons. That's gonna feel like a lot if you're not used to this type of dressing. Keep in mind that this is making a good solid 6 adult serves worth of salad. So we're gonna do 5 tablespoons of tamari. It's a wonderful flavor in there, but it's not overpowering. And this is going to contribute a lot of our salt content. So as you can see, we're not actually adding much, if any, salt to this dressing. I think that was 4. And here goes 5. There we go. All right. Now I've separated these elements on the dressing recipe because we're going to actually blend this first. And then if you're making the tempeh, I would recommend reserving some of this liquid so that we can fry the tempeh in it, just to give it that extra bit of flavor on the tempeh itself. So I'm just going to give this a quick blitz. Try to let the garlic and the ginger mince up in that liquid. Sorry for the noise. Okay. Woo. All right, so that's exactly what we want, just a kind of a soupy blended ginger and garlic. And then, like I said, we're gonna take out 2 tablespoons approximately, just to give the tempeh a bit of extra flavor. Tempeh's like tofu, it's kind of a blank canvas. So we just need to give it a little bit of extra oomph. Okay, so that's for the tempeh. And then we'll come back and add the rest of the ingredients for the dressing. Now, the 1/4 cup of orange juice, I've got 1/2 cup of pomelo juice here. I'm just going to go 1/2 of that for my 1/4, roughly, a little bit more. And then the lemon we have left to do. Now, as I'm sure you've probably heard me say before, recipes are just guidelines. If you don't love lemon, put less. If you absolutely don't like garlic, put less. If you love it, put more. They're just a guide. And the more you gain confidence and the more of these cook with me's that you do, the more you'll see where you can be flexible and where you've kind of got to be a little bit more exact. Generally speaking, savory dishes or anything that's not baking, you can be fairly flexible with whatever you're making. So roughly 3 tablespoons of lemon juice. Should be enough from one. See what we get. 1, 2, 3. If you don't have much extra, you can always put that in too. Okay. Now, tahini. You wouldn't ever think that I love tahini because I buy it by the 2 kilo bucket. There's hulled, there's unhulled, totally your preference. Unhulled has more nutrition, but it also has a much stronger flavor. It can be a bit more bitter. So some people do not like the bitterness. If in doubt, stick with the hulled, and then you should be able to use more of it. So 1 tablespoon of that one. There we go. The other thing I want to mention is those of you that are not used to making your own dressings, and you might be sitting here going, oh my gosh, it's so much easier to buy dressing at the shops. Keep in mind that this is the type of thing that makes the biggest difference when it comes to nutrition in the meal. The fact that we can use high quality oils instead of the commercial, generally highly processed at high heat temperatures with solvents and et cetera, we're going to be getting a much better bang for our buck if we buy the original ingredients and make the dressings. It might feel hard if this is brand new to you, but the more you do this and the more you get used to making a slightly larger batch that you can have for the week on different salads or different even steamed vegetables, then the easier it's going to get. And that's exactly the type of little habits that I'm trying to help you develop so that this is just as easy. The fact that I'm sitting here talking you through every step and going into all the detail on the things, obviously we don't do this every time we make it. And for me, whipping up this dressing now, A, I don't have to think about it, and soon you won't either. And B, it's actually really quick, all right? So please don't be discouraged by the amount of information I'm giving you or the amount of steps that we're going to. I just want you to know that it's not as hard as it may look at first. Okay, so now we need 1/3 cup of the mixed salad oils. Now, why do I bother mixing them? Okay, that's a great question. I go to the effort of mixing them mainly for the concept of variety. So in my opinion, and based on all the research that I've done, the more variety that we have in our diet, the more likelihood we have of getting the nutrients that our body needs. We don't necessarily have to know exactly that I need this many more milligrams of that and that many more milligrams of that on a daily basis. Can you imagine tracking that every single day? I just feel like that would be so stressful. So when we go from the perspective of variety in the diet and really getting more creative with the type of vegetables that you eat and trying new foods that you've never eaten before, your body is much more likely to get the building blocks that it critically needs without you even having to do any extra effort other than get creative and adventurous with your food. So when I say 1/3 cup of mixed salad oils, I'm talking your cold pressed oils, the delicate ones that we never put in the frying pan or cook with because they've got so many wonderful components and nutrition when they're raw, when they're cold pressed. So I'm just going to mix up some, in this case, certified organic cold pressed olive oil. I buy that in bulk, so I refill this. I'm going to use a little bit of, again, some organic cold pressed sesame oil. This is natural untoasted sesame oil as opposed to the toasted variety, which is this one. If you smell them side by side, they are dramatically different. This one puts some people off and other people absolutely love it. We only need a couple of drops of the toasted variety, and that's only if you love that sesame flavor. So completely up to your palate. Start with less if you're not sure and add more after. And I do want to really point out the flaxseed oil. So cold pressed flaxseed oil is, in my opinion, a must in every kitchen. Why? We've talked about this probably before on some other ones, is the omega-3 content. There is 53% of the fats in the flax oil is omega-3, which is very high, and it's much higher than the omega-6s. So it can balance out all the other oils and all the other sources of omega-6 in our diet every day. And this is where a lot of people run into difficulty with their health, is because we do tend to have many more omega-6s than omega-3s in the body, and we're not getting that powerful essential fatty acid that the body needs to protect the brain and to protect the connections between a lot of the nerves. So it doesn't take much. A couple of teaspoons in this dressing recipe will be enough to balance out your omega-3s. And that's all we need. It's got a nice nutty flavor as well. So approximately 1/3 of a cup of wonderfully nutritious salad oils, the good fats that we do not generally get enough of in a day. And I added the sesame oil in within that. And then the salt we've called for as well. But you're welcome to leave that until after you taste it to see how your palate goes. The one thing I will say is, as is the case with any dressing, and I mean this for every dressing, is when you taste it on its own, it needs to taste nearly too salty or too strong or too punchy in order to carry that same effect through the salad, through the pile of vegetables that you're putting it onto. So my point there is, if the dressing is not strong enough to begin with, when you put it over a salad or over the vegetables, that flavor is not going to carry, and you're going to feel like it needs something or that it's really bland. So when we taste it on its own, it needs to be very punchy. And that's why I say add the salt later, but do make sure that it does give that sort of effect into the dish. Okay, so one last little blend here. Sorry for the noise. And there we have it. So let's give that a little taste. And then you can adjust as per your palate. I'm trying it for the first time with pomelo. Awesome. Okay. Now, if when you taste it, you feel like you could drink the stuff, it's going to need a bit more punch. So you can decide now what punch you want to give it. The right-hand punch is lemon and the acid. The left-hand punch is going to be some salt. And if you're using a good quality salt, then that's absolutely okay. Nothing to worry about there. Your body can extract what it needs from the trace minerals. So again, if you're not sure, start with less. I'm going to add, like the recipe calls for here on the low side, 1/2 teaspoon to that. And we don't even really need to blend it again. We'll just give that one a little shake. And then we'll call that our dressing. You can taste it again if you like. Check and measure. But hopefully, if this is something that you love as far as flavor goes, don't limit it to this salad. You can make this dressing on your meal prep day for any salads throughout the week. I love a dressing similar to this for example, a soba noodle salad, or I use the 100% buckwheat soba noodles, but any type of kind of that satay noodle salad, it's delicious on. Instead of the tahini, you could add the peanut butter to get that kind of satay feel as well, but it's largely the same base. So very much a lot of learnings in this that can apply to any salad that you want to put it on, especially if you love it. All right, so that's done. We've got all the components of the salad done. All that's left is the tempeh. So I'm going to get you started on that. Let's come over to cut that up first, and then we will get that happening in the frying pan. Okay, now tempeh. For those of you that are new to this world of tempeh, don't be scared of it. Although it does look a little bit funny when you open it. This wonderful brand is local to us on the Sunshine Coast here. I've met the wonderful man that makes it, and he puts a lot of love and a lot of heart into his tempeh. All right, now, for those of you that shy away from soy, or you've heard that soy is bad, or you're really confused about soy, all I want to say on that topic is there's a lot to that argument about soy. Soy is a very nutritious plant. It's very high in protein, and it's got a lot of other benefits to it. It's low in fat. For example, as a comparison, there's 26% protein in steak. There's 19% protein in soy, particularly tempeh, because it's been fermented. So different to tofu, and I'll talk about that in a sec. So 26% in beef, 19% in tempeh. So very, very close on the protein side of things. And the other thing I'll just drop in there, we're not going to go into full detail on that now, but it's much more easy for people in the West to eat too much protein than it is to have not enough. And that's, again, a topic for another day. But just so you're not worried about that, just because it's 26 versus 19, this is still excellent. In terms of fat content, there's 15 grams of fat, 15% fat in beef, and only 11% in the soy, in the tempeh. And there's a lot of other differences. So soy, for example, also has 20% of our daily requirements for calcium, and a whole host of other additional benefits as well. So I'm not comparing the two for any reason other than to say that it's a great food for many reasons. Now, the one thing I do want to say is that it is very different to tofu. So tofu has not been fermented. Tempeh has. And for that reason, it becomes a lot more digestible and it becomes a lot more friendly to our gut. Much of the research, and by the way, there's just as much research proving that soy is amazing as there is saying that soy is not so great. Well, it's hard to say that they're equal, but my point here is that it's different for everyone. And what most research is now coming to is that it comes down to your gut bacteria. So the cultures in the world that eat soy successfully, eat tons of it, don't get any hormone bending effects, are generally cultures with a different type of bacteria in their gut. So for the most part, soy can be successfully digested if we have the right bacteria in our gut. If we don't, then we might get some of those effects. But either way, no matter what, when you go with soy, we definitely want to go non-genetically modified. So if you can trust certified organic, and fermented is better than not fermented. All right, so as is the case, everything in moderation. I absolutely love this stuff. Hopefully you'll enjoy it even if it's brand new to you. I love it, but I do make sure that it's a bit of a treat for me. I don't have it every single day by any means. Okay, so it comes in this nice little patty, nice little slab. I like to get as much surface area as I can to absorb the flavor that we're going to put in the frying pan. So personally, I like thin little strips, and we could take it even further and kind of chop them up to look a little bit more like bacon bits if you liked. Some people even do create recipes and things called tempeh bacon. It can be made to taste very similar, but I don't really feel the need to mimic it because it's yummy on its own. All right, so nice little thin strips, and then we're going to get the frying pan heated up. So let's go do that now. If you haven't already got that out, we will need the frying pan, and we will need some high heat safe oil. So let's get that one started. Okay, our rice is nearly there. It's looking fairly absorbed. So what I mean by high heat safe oil, again, another big topic I will cover in more detail in another video. I'm going to be using coconut oil that is third press coconut oil. So the first press is extra virgin, the second press is virgin, the third press is sometimes called cooking oil, sometimes called deodorized coconut oil, sometimes called nothing, just coconut oil. So that's the one that's safe in the frying pan. The first two have a lot of other nutrition, but that nutrition is unfortunately a lot more volatile at the high heats, and it can then turn to trans fats or bad fats basically at the high heat. So we do want to make use of the third press coconut oil in the frying pan. Every other time, all your raw desserts and any other time you're having the coconut oil not on high heat, we can definitely go the extra virgin or the virgin. All right, so let's bring our tempeh over. We've already got our tamari stuff over there. Okay. Now the preheating of the frying pan in this case is just to turn a stainless steel or a cast iron pan non-stick. So I just try to let it get a bit of heat in the beginning before we add the oil, and that makes it non-stick. I'm not actually going to be searing this or turning it to really high temperatures. So in this case, I know it's not fully heated yet properly as a frying pan, but it's going to be okay because I'm not going to be going to super high temperatures. So I'm just going to put a little bit, about a tablespoon of your cooking oil in here to fry in. If you haven't got the third press coconut oil, the other options you could use would be ghee. I would really recommend organic ghee if you're doing dairy. And otherwise, in this case, peanut oil, if you have a nice cold pressed peanut oil, that would be good in here as well, but it will impart that peanut flavor. All right, so let's just get that around the pan. Now, if you've never had tempeh before and you are doing it tonight with me, then you're very brave and I'm very proud of you. And I really hope it's a positive experience. So all I'll say to that is let's make sure we add enough flavor. So it's not quite gonna sear yet, but we'll just pop those guys in there, spread them around the pan, and then we just wanna let them fry off. So the key here is you cannot possibly add, I shouldn't say that. It's pretty hard to add too much delicious seasoning to tempeh. So you can add extra garlic, extra ginger, those are my favorites. Tamari is one of another favorites of mine on tempeh. Even just spices and seasonings are delicious. A little bit of extra salt and pepper, whatever you like, but get experimental, have fun. Think of it as a blank canvas. Love tempeh. All right, so we're gonna turn this guy up a little bit, get this sizzling away. And once it starts to fry off a little bit, then I'll add in the extra ginger, the garlic, and the tamari. So I'm gonna let that happen, and while we're doing that, let's go back over and get rid of the skins on the capsicum. All right. All right, so good question here from Sharon. Thank you, Sharon. What brand of tempeh do I use and where can we buy it? Okay, so the brand that I'm using, like I said, is a locally made one. It is the Mighty Bean tempeh. It's made in Yandina, and they make a couple of varieties. So I have to be very particular to buy the original variety because it's the gluten-free kind. They may have one other one that's gluten-free, but some of the other ones use a soy sauce that has wheat in it. So just as a heads up, if you are 100% gluten-free, then just check to get the original flavor, original variety. Okay, that's good. We can leave that go for a sec. Turn on some airflow. All right, capsicum, here we go. So they've cooled enough. Now we can handle them by hand, and you should be able to just take some of this charred skin off. It gets a little bit easier if we were to go to the trouble of sweating it, but I don't find it that difficult. So we'll just take that charred bit off, and then we get the yummy leftover flesh underneath. So it should just kind of puff, almost puff off after it's been charred effectively. So this is a good thing for the kids to do. You can get them peeling while you have a sip of wine or take a break. And again, if it doesn't completely come off, that's absolutely fine. For this case, it's mostly just to give it a nice, beautiful texture and flavor to the dish, instead of just being a raw bit of capsicum. So let's peel that one off. All right, now, if you guys have any questions, let me hear them. Lay them on me. Who's trying tempeh for the first time tonight? I want to know that. And who's going to be very brave with I guess experimenting on the family, if that's new to them. If you weren't going to use tempeh, obviously this salad, you could use any other side that you wanted or not. It doesn't need one. That's just a bit of a bonus we threw in there because the rice was going to be cooking anyways. And the rice is probably done, so we can go have a check on it after we finish a couple of these. All right, that's probably going to be enough for my initial salad. I'll save the rest for later. Hopefully some of you are developing your habits of getting your kitchen set up for a meal prep session, and you've already run your sink of hot soapy water, so it's ready for you. Okay, so let's give these a flip. See how we're getting this nice grilling of the tempeh on some sides? That's exactly what we're after. So it's just a light fry, if you will, in just a very little bit of oil. And this is, again, like I said, this is a treat. So this is not something that I have in huge amounts. It's not something that we have super often, but for me, this is a nice little treat that makes a salad extra special. So once we start getting a little bit of this frying happening, then we can add the other bits of seasoning. It's going to sizzle quite a bit. There we go. Any little bits of flavor. I'm going to also add some salt and pepper, just to make it extra tasty. If you wanted, you could add a sprinkle of chili powder or cayenne spice, however you want to do that. Or even sprinkle some extra tamari on it if you want it just to be a little bit extra special like that. So personally, I do like frying this off fairly well. You won't hear me say that often, but tempeh is one of those ones that I like it to be kind of crispy, kind of toasty. And especially if it's your first time with it, cook it long enough. All right, so that's nearly done. Let's check on the rice. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, so you see how everything's absorbed. Some people look in there and they go, oh my gosh, it's burnt, it's absorbed dry. But this is exactly what we want. So when you scoop down the bottom, we've got these nice separated fluffy grains of rice, and there's no liquid down the bottom anymore. It's fully absorbed and yet not burnt onto the bottom of the pan. So that's perfect. There we go. This is the absorption method. Honestly, it's never let me down. Notice how I didn't even time the rice. I just kept gabbing. So we've been a little bit longer than 40 minutes, not the end of the world. Because we're using the whole grain rice, it can actually benefit from a slightly longer cook if you want it to be a bit softer. So what I will say here is this is probably one of the healthiest ways that you can eat grains. And by adding in the wild rice, we're making it even healthier to boot. So yes, I just said to boot. So if this is something that you could fathom having in your diet, it just seemed like a lot of work, make a double batch, make a triple batch, and once it's cooked, freeze it. Freeze it into individual portions if you have to. It's great for making porridge with by overcooking it. Once you pull it out of the freezer, add an extra liquid, let it sit and simmer and overcook into a nice porridge. Add your spices. You can turn it into sticky pudding. You can have it just as is by re-steaming it lightly before a meal. Just make it easier in your world by having it cooked and in the freezer. And then it's a reality. All right, that's ready, that's ready, this is ready. We are ready to assemble the salad. There we go. Okay. Bring this on over. And don't forget the sultanas or the cranberries, whichever one you want to use, if you want to use them. And then we are so nearly ready to eat. All right, how are we going, everyone? Good, Nick, are you getting hungry? I'm hungry too. Angela, okay, so your rice seems a little gluggy, not separating. Does that mean a little longer? It could mean a little longer. If there's any sign of moisture still down in the bottom of the pot, then yes, leave the lid on, let it keep going. If the rice itself seems overcooked, then maybe we somehow added a little bit too much water, or the rice wasn't like a whole grain brown rice, for example. So if it was by accident, say a brown basmati, then that wouldn't take as much water and it might feel a little bit soggier. So hard to say. Taste it, Angela, and feel if it's fully cooked. If it's fully cooked, then we maybe just had a bit too much water and we can drain off any excess water that we can get out of it. Otherwise, let's leave the lid on, let it keep cooking so it can continue absorbing that water. Hope that helps. When it comes to the absorption method, it is something that you will master very quickly if you write down exactly what you do and you're a little bit meticulous about your measurements. Then eventually you'll know exactly how your rices behave, how all that works, and you'll nail it every time. So yes, great question. Glad you asked. Okay, now, as far as presenting the salad, if you want to have it hot, then we just got to get it on the plates. So you can mix it however you like. You can layer it, you can toss it, completely up to you. I'm going to make some strips of this capsicum and serve it in strips instead for a little change it up. Otherwise, you can get a nice big bowl and toss it. All right. So for the amount that we're going to eat tonight, I'm going to mix the dressing all the way through it. So I'm just going to mix up a little bit of the rice. Okay. The rest we can toss once everything's cool so that the precious leaves and stuff in here don't wilt while it's still hot. So we can toss that when it's cool for leftovers tomorrow. And another salad tomorrow. All right, so let's put some of our green beans, some of our chopped greens, our strips of capsicum. I like sultanas, just a little bit, just a little something sweet through there. Okay. Tempeh we'll put on top. The seeds you can either put on top or put a couple through. I like to put a couple through it. And save a little bit extra on top. Love the sesame seeds. All right, now because we love our food, let's toss by hand. Very Jamie Oliver style, I guess. There we go. And then we can either serve it on a big platter if we're serving it for many people or individual plates, and finish it off there with a big dressing. Ah, the ultimate smell-o-vision. Smelling good. Okay, now spooning it onto our plates. We eat first with our eyes, so let's pay a little bit of extra attention to our plating up, especially if this is the meal of the night. Zoe, I know you're doing a very good job at plating up right now. I can feel it. All right, so let's get a little bit fancy here. Let's put some tempeh on top. I think the magic thing is odd numbers when it comes to the presentation piece on a salad. We might even want to throw an extra little bit of yellow onto there. Fancy bit of dressing that can be mixed through as you're ready for it. And there we have the warm wild rice salad with some grilled tempeh on it. So enjoy it while it's warm, and enjoy the rest of the leftovers when they're cool tomorrow, keeping in mind to taste your dressing before you put it in the fridge. If it's getting a little bit too strong in the garlic or the ginger, you can strain it. Otherwise, it'll be even better tomorrow once we mix it all through the salad. So I hope you enjoy. Thank you so much for coming to cook with me tonight. It was a big one. Thanks, guys. I appreciate your attention, and I hope you learned a lot tonight. I'd really love to hear about it, so please share with us. What was your key takeaway? I'd really love to know what the kind of number one thing that stood out for you was from today's Cook With Me. Thank you, and happy eating. Bon appetit.